We are live. What's up, everyone? How are you doing? Silus, Ronan, Regan,
Hello there.
how you guys doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. How are you?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Was running late for my own show a little bit, but that's fine. That's fine because that's just that's how I always am. But I'm glad you guys all came because this is something I want to brainstorm basically today. Because I want to eventually, like I was telling you guys in the chat yesterday, I want to do maybe a more in-depth series on this topic, but I need to brainstorm with some of my buddies here to get some ideas before actually going forward with that and knowing if I want to do it with a group of people by myself or what, how much work it might be. Because I think it's important because eventually I think the when you dive into this sort of area and what may be behind these individuals, you're ultimately pointing back towards these social engineers that are actually behind like everything.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The entire thing as well. It appears on the face of it, in terms of serial killers, it appears to be a massive psyop. If there was a fact that Zeal provided when I was speaking to him about this just today, and it was actually something I was unaware of. But I looked up, and he's correct. 90% of reported serial killer cases occurred between 1970 and 1999.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely insane fact, which just shows that clearly it's a time specific phenomenon, which obviously intimates, or at least would lead us to suspect that, of course, it is a psychological operation.
Absolutely. And you did a
Yeah.
whole, and Silas, you did a whole workup on the Zodiac Killer, basically, or the Zodiac Killers, whatever was going on during that time. I don't know what did you find with all of that?
Well, I was looking into. I've always been interested in the Black Dahlia case, and there's an individual called Steve Hodel. He is a retired LA detective, and then, funnily enough, his father was George Hodel, who was a sort of socialite, LA socialite within the 40s and early 1950s. And anyway, the irony of it, right? The LA detective finds out that his father is actually the killer of this very famous LA cold case, the Black Dahlia
Mm-hmm.
case. He also finds that he's involved in the lipstick murders as well. When his father moved over to the Philippines in Manila, you had a case called the Jigsaw Murders, and the Jigsaw Murderer also it bore the same hallmarks that you saw of the lipstick murders and Black Dahlia case. And of course, as well, he finds that a lot of the cryptic messages and I guess you would call it symbols and steganography that's present in the Zodiac case also point to his father as well. I did a frequency analysis breakdown of the Z130 cipher, and I sent it to Steve Hodel. I haven't heard anything back, but I'm pretty sure I've broke that. I've deciphered that, and it
So
does say George Hodel Jr.
this was one of the ones that hasn't been broken yet.
Yeah, this is the one that hasn't been broken yet. So, but
That's
it does
hilarious.
say George. It does say George Hodel Jr. and the frequency analysis of it also pans out. So I don't know.
Man, and I mean all the symbolism just in the everything that happened around that case. It's all occult symbolism. I mean, it's an astrological symbolism. It's also the very similar to the Jack the Ripper uh, nonsense, which seemed to be like a Masonic or a royal family type deal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Zodiac case is almost even more occult than the Black Dahlia case. With the Black Dahlia case, we have this, and it was something that Steve Hodel hasn't picked up on. I'm actually in the midst of still writing a book on it. I'm about 54 pages through it, and I haven't touched it in about a year. But just because I know this will probably take years to finish the book on. But Steve Hodel doesn't discuss his father's occult leanings. And in fact, when I was in correspondence with Steve Hodel, I asked him, because his father is always pictured with the Hindu Yamantaka, which is the destroyer of Yama, the destroyer of death. So I stated to him, there's clear symbolic occult connections between the way that, of course, Elizabeth Short's body was placed and positioned, and is a sort of minotaur. That's what he calls it. It's also related to the Shin Letter. She was cut in twain, of course, through the entire pelvic region. So the bottom part is basically the Hindu Shakti. That sort of symbolism, right? Sorry to be morbid, but we're talking about serial killers here. And so it's the legs are spread open in that sort of Shakti pose, and then above that you have obviously I guess you could say a sort of Shivite lingam, and also the Shin Letter as well is visible there. Of course, he calls it the Minotaur. There's other things as well, the likes of his surreal artist friend Man Ray. I forget his actual real name, but Man Ray was also another very strange and, you could say, sadistic person as well. And obviously George Hodel fancied himself an artist. But the interesting thing about the case, and the sort of suspicious thing that would lead one to suspect, that there was some involvement from the upper echelons of society and the authorities, is that once the heat was coming down on George Hodel, he actually was tipped off. This is according to Steve Hodel. He was tipped off to leave LA, and right away he landed in a great job in the UN. And in fact, up to that point, he worked with the UN. So,
I mean, yeah, there's
nothing
some
suspicious there.
I mean, you could even get that last name is interesting that he has in itself with the Hodel and Hodel, and you could make an argument that there's a little bit of a crypto, I guess, crypto technocracy symbolism hidden within just the name Hodel.
Oh,
or
yeah.
Hodel.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, him and his family were obviously Russian Jewish descent. He was a first-generation immigrant there. And so his family changed their name. I forget what their name was prior to emigrating to the US. But the name Hodel, or Hod-El, well, firstly, Hod is a Kabbalistic term, but it means glory. So you have the glory of El, or glory of Saturn. El and Saturn are synonymous. And then, of course, George is linked with the Greek for harvest or farm work. So ultimately, just again, this is just, I'm sure, a coincidence. His name taken as a sort of a universal cryptic message could be taken, or could be inferred as the harvest for the glory of El/Saturn.
And I don't actually, I don't think it's a coincidence, just because of the friend, the Man Ray. Man Ray is the ray symbolism is it's, I've been on and on about this ray thing and how many times they use it in films as a name, especially like Mulholland Drive it's used in. Yeah, think of what's the one where he makes the baseball field and his name's Ray.
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams. Constantly, you'll find they use the name Ray used in so many films, and I think it's a lot of just connections to like the Seven Rays and all that New Age sort of nonsense.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Jump in, Reagan.
I just find it interesting with that statistic of 90% of the serial killers were from 1970 to 1999. I started watching that Millennium show, which is 96 to 98. It's 3 seasons. And the guy's got some mystical, it's very biblical, prophetical, and all that. But when you're just watching the show, if you're not even paying attention to that stuff, it's just about catching serial killers, and the main guy is like a what do you call it? They did the same thing in the original. Shoot, I'm drawing blanks. Hannibal Lecter.
Mm.
The detective was, able to get inside the mind of the killer, right? But it almost breaks them every time. It's like they had to quit the force and come back as a consultant or whatever it is, right? They even did it in Nefarious. That's basically what that doctor.
Yeah.
Right. So this detective, same thing. He ended up like quitting the force, and he comes back as a consultant working for this mysterious group that's called the Millennium Group. And the show's called Millennium, right?
Okay.
And I'm thinking, like, with all the serial killer stuff, like, it's been made for media. I can't think of somebody actually being born into whatever tragedy and being able to come up with the skills and the resources and all these other things to become a serial killer unless you were already born into it from the start. The stories are always like this orphan ended up being this serial killer through abuse or brutality, or parents were killed, or etc. Yeah, I would see it more as like well, you can call them rich elites or whatever, such like that, just becoming bored. That would be the only reason for,
Absolutely.
actually becoming a serial killer.
Roni, you got anything you want to add?
Oh, absolutely. So much love, gratitude. Appreciate having me here. I find it no coincidence that you were talking about Ray, and then we have Ray Gone here.
That's right.
So, yeah, confirmed.
Confirmed. Illuminati confirmed. The ray gun.
Yeah, I mean, just quick etymology, just random on the whole serial. Of course, everything goes back to seafaring, if you believe it or not. Every single, all this language is encoded. So one thing in like ancient Hebrew, it does mean to row or line, right? So you have an order, sequence, line, linked together kind of thing. So just on a quick etymology on serial. But yes, so there are dark forces out there that are all in a collective Ra Legion of Ra, and hurting people is a big part of. Someone's coming up to my door right now. We got a serial killer coming up to my literal door. Did you hear my doorbell, dude?
Yeah, yep. I just heard it.
Bro, and I'm looking at him.
They heard you talking about him.
Oh, bro, he's an agent for sure. This is no coincidence. People do get annihilated all the time. and it doesn't get the publicity. So one has asked himself, good Lord, I'm sorry, guys. It's my turn to talk and all chaos is happening.
No worries, brother. No
Okay.
worries.
I'm going to mute my mic. But there's a reason why some of these cases get narratives.
Yeah, no. And speaking of, back to the Black Dahlia case, I remember, Silas, you had asked me to go buy that house, and I never did. The John Soden house, right? That's what it's called, not Snowden, but Soden.
Yes.
And that's a very interesting house, especially considered it's like a Mayan looking. I think the architecture is supposed to be Mayan, and they call it either it's called the Jaws house or the Franklin house, which, I mean,
Yeah.
that automatically makes me start thinking of the Franklin Institute, and then you think of Jaws, you start thinking of Spielberg and his connections to Hollywood.
Yeah, it's built in a neo-Mayan style as well. Of course, it's to resemble a Mayan temple.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that the Mayans were involved in, but like the Aztecs and other Central American cultures, they were involved in human sacrifice quite prodigiously. So, yeah.
Silas, I'm sorry, brother. May I interrupt on that? I believe that is a complete fabrication. Like in the movies, and you see the wholesale industrial murdering of its people. I believe that is a complete BS, because if you go to like the Yucatan Peninsula, you'll go to like cenotes, which is incredibly amazing fresh water, from springs, these fresh waters all over the place. And as well as Mexico City, which used to be surrounded by water, they filled it in. It is, in my opinion, completely, and they would say the cenotes, they would do those sacrifices and then throw the bodies into the cenotes. It makes zero sense to poison your own fresh water for your own civilization on a logical sense. So that to me is one of those things that is completely not true. I just want to throw that out there.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's actually an interesting point. But at the same time, I guess for this conversation, true or not, they've made that the symbolism of so they want us to think, when we see Mayan, they want you to think sacrifice.
Yeah.
So whatever it means to them
the narrative idea, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it may not mean that to us, or it may not be that, but to them, for some reason, it means that.
There's something to mention too regarding the Shin Letter. It crops up again, and well, firstly, it crops up in the JFK assassination. I just want to point that out. That's probably the most prime example of that, but of course, that doesn't link to serial killing. But interestingly, where Short's body was found is a place called, if I get the name, it says, South Norton Avenue. But if you look at that, it's Limart Park, the main drag there, and it's if you look at the street plan, you see the Shin Letter, and where she's found is, of course, if you're making the Shin Letter as opposed to the Sin Letter, the dot or the diacritic which is basically, it's just the dot at the top. It's either at the top right if it's the Sin, or if it's the Shin Letter, it's at the top left. Now, of course, this has Kabbalistic connotations. I won't go into it, but ultimately what you're seeing there is everything was meticulously planned. Now, I have notes on the Jack the Ripper case. In fact, it pretty much is, it goes through everything, really. And there was a couple of things that I actually added to it, because there was a really fascinating sort of discussion, or series of discussions by a guy called Charles Giuliani. and he did an excellent breakdown of the Jack the Ripper case, things that I was actually even unaware of. And if you look at the Jack the Ripper case, where all of the various murders occurred, if you draw a line between them all, it creates this same sort of aerial pattern, right? Of a pentagram. I think it was in the case of Jack the Ripper. So all of these things have the same sort of markers. They're the same sort of symbolic markers. Interestingly, as well, by the way, George Hodel was of Russian Jewish descent. The Jack the Ripper murderer, who they believe it actually was now, based on new evidence coming to light. They believe he was of Russian Jewish descent as well. I forget his name now. I think it was his name Kaminsky, or I think it was Kaminsky or something.
Let me see. I actually don't. I know there's a few different people who they have suggested it was, but yeah, no. I think you were right about the outline of the bodies, because there are the main 5 victims, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would make sense. It's also interesting, this surgeon sort of connection between, like, the way you have the Black Dahlia Elizabeth Short found and the bodies of the Ripper victims, aside from maybe one of them who seems to be a little bit more viciously cut up than the others. They say there's or at least a presented story is that there's a surgical precision, which seems to be on purpose.
Oh yeah, the Black Dahlia case was, well, the detectives that looked at the case initially, they stated that it was, well, the bisection, which is of course what occurred to Elizabeth Short. The bisection was so unbelievably precise that, and by the way, that's not an easy thing to do. And moreover, as well, it's actually a medical procedure that's done in very life-threatening cases. But to that point, it wasn't a very, it was still a new and novel surgery technique. So the only way for you to be able to carry out a bisection with that sort of precision would be, of course, with medical implements and with a knowledge of that, not at that point, a novel technique of surgery. So it had to be not just a doctor, but it had to be a surgeon, or at least a doctor with a surgical background, which of course Hodel did have.
Mm-hmm.
We have pictures of him. Yeah, jump in, man.
Silas, what this reminds me of, again, I'll bring up a wholesale industrial thing that was attributed to the Mayans, Aztecs, and you just brought something up. Organ trafficking is and they don't talk about it, but they'll on some of these individual cases will share it, but on a very industrial level, obviously you have places like China that like wholesale organ against their will. Let's just say they're not willing donors, you know what I mean? Of organs, which is, who knows how many that's taken place. So I don't mean to digress from your where you were going. Is it an individual practitioner and just trying to be weird, or is it more of a, maybe it's an organ harvesting situation?
It's interesting you mention that, because I'm pretty sure Hodel, by the admission of his son, that Hodel was running an illegal abortion clinic as well, which of course, I don't know if it was still going on in those days, but abortion's such a a huge thing nowadays because it's used for the harvesting of stem cells and things such as that.
Well, this
So,
also,
yeah.
it's actually, I'm glad Ronan brought that up because if we look at like someone like John Wayne Gacy and everyone who you can connect him to, you could start connecting him to this trafficking ring. I think that was called the Delta Project. And that trafficking ring was, I think, more so for sexual trafficking, but that got into then organ harvesting and organ trafficking because it was you were sexually trafficking minors that were also then being murdered on in snuff films, and the organs then were being passed around as well. So you have all these operations stemming off of like various groups of individuals who are somehow connected to this serial killer who I don't think was acting alone at all. Because, I mean, with Gacy, they have, first of all, it's just strange. The 33 victims, 2 or 3 of the victims are supposedly murdered when he cannot be placed within the state. He has 12 sets of keys to his house. And then on the whole clown symbolism, I think is just interesting in itself.
Oh yeah,
I think the
yeah.
clown symbolism dates back way back. That's
Yeah.
been going on forever.
Well, and it gets to the point of wondering: was that more of a like ritual humiliation?
I would think so. That's why you have like the movies like It and the clown murder stuff, and they had all the things on TikTok, and there was people scaring people in major cities across the United States, dressing up as clowns, walking around with
Yeah,
big weapons, right? I mean,
yeah, and the trafficker
these
that
are
oh, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Reagan. Sorry, I was just gonna say the trafficker's name who was running Project Delta was John Norman. So he's the one running the basically they're trafficking, I guess, kids to be murdered in snuff films, which is
Yeah.
very dark, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean,
But that right there proves, I mean, you have this guy connected to Gacy, you know he's connected to a ring that's obviously murdering people. They're showing you right there, there's a group of people who are paying for services and murdering that aren't lone wolves. The lone wolf thing is nonsense. I mean, the name itself is, Gabe was telling me the other day, the name itself is a like double. It's like it doesn't mean anything. It's like there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Wolves hunt in packs.
right. Yeah, and the what was I just thinking of? Oh, the Hostel series. Speaking of
Exactly.
Hodel and hotels,
Exactly.
the Hostel series was literally like rich elite people need something more to do. They need a bigger adrenaline rush, so they created that agency, right? The Hounds, where they abduct people and have rich people come and pay money to murder people, right? That's
Exactly.
essentially what Hostel was. If I ruined it for anybody, sorry. It's a horror movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, the world's most dangerous game. You know what I mean? Hunting. We also have to realize, based on that, one person that you said was from Russia, Russian Small Hat, and several others. They that organized cult, it does not see those outside of their cult as that it's cattle, it's chattel, right? The goy are open season. Based on the the Talmud and all that is there. It's in their writings. This is not speculation or anything like that. So any connection to that type of ilk, which is a worldwide affair, and they are all in on it. Whatever the costume or whatever the hat that they're wearing at the time, they are totally cool with seeing everyone else that's not them as part of the herd, and there's nothing wrong with using the herd for whatever it is that you desire. That is in their writings. This is not theory or anything like that. So
Yeah. And so I wanted to bring another case up that do you guys remember the Fort Bragg murders with because that guy was a doctor who they tried to blame it on, Jeffrey McDonald. He worked, I believe, at Fort Bragg as a military physician. His family gets murdered by basically members of the Process Church who come in just like the Manson family, chanting all on LSD and whatnot. They try to kill him too. He doesn't die, but then they try to pin it on him. Eventually, he gets acquitted, but I don't think they ever make any arrests in the case, at least not that I'm aware of.
I'm pretty sure Ted Gunderson did an investigation of that case. That was in 1970. I'm pretty sure. There was
Yeah.
also something peculiar about the way that the crime scene was also, I guess, constructed, which of course is another hallmark you see in all of these various cases. I can't quite recall now, but Ted Gunderson did do a series of not discussions, but a series of lectures and speeches on it.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting.
They had written on the walls, I believe, just like the same type of thing the Manson case had, and they were chanting. I think they were even like black cloaks, because this was all related to the
Oh, right.
process. It was all Process Church members, and they were, I think, trying to get rid of this guy, according to Austin Picard, who does a lot of good stuff on this on his channel, the Underclass podcast, I think it's called. Let me make sure I'm right on that. You guys know which podcast I'm talking about?
Mm-mm. I
No,
also haven't been watching too many podcasts lately. So.
Let me double check that. Just to the Underclass podcast. It's really good. He does a lot of work basically on this subject. But yeah, he had said he believed that they were trying to set him up because he was kind of interfering with a heroin distribution ring that the Process Church and some of the military, I guess, staff at Fort Bragg were operating together.
oh yeah, that would make sense. And of course, we'll see that would be getting involved in in attempting to impede their control of the population through those means, which is narcotics. There was someone that stated in the Discord server, and it was actually quite very, very insightful. And all they stated was that when times get, far more difficult, cost of living goes up and everything, do you notice the drugs get harder?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mr.
there's a
Rioso.
correlation there. Mr. Rioso, yeah, he stated that. Perfect point. Absolutely perfect. And it shows that there's a connection here.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, we know a lot about Manson. We don't know what happened that night with Manson. I don't know it does connect to all of this, because it seems like all of this ties back to like Gladio and a bunch of these intelligence operations that we have no idea how real the operations even were. I mean, what was this? The Manson stuff mostly happened back in Mulholland Drive, which is a movie I just actually mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, because it's just all a controlled living area for actors and actresses in Hollywood.
yeah, what's interesting is I think Manson didn't actually kill anyone.
Yeah, no, they say maybe he did someone else who not the murders that he was accused of, at least, but maybe they say he might have shot someone on the side of the road at some point. But
So
it's
the ones that own the whole Hollywood and messaging that's out there. I find it interesting with all the horror movies, especially in the 80s. They were pretty rough, and we see the decaying of society as far as morals. So they kind of have been programming the populace with just watching violence and all the stuff for decades now. You know, really lowering the vibe on a on their broadcasting, on their casting, and these are dark magi, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see the results kind of today, where just kind of like the masses are a little desensitized from murder. Like they watch, that's what. There's a comedian, several comedians that pointed this out, like like women, and I'm not trying to be the, mess with women, but it's like women love watching murder mysteries.
Oh yeah.
Murder
Eat
porn.
it up. Yeah, dude, it's to make them feel, you feel it, and that I'm sure that is an absolute obvious, on purpose to kind of desensitize people, to lower the vibe on things. Um, I mean, letting the crazies out, the crazies, you know, um, people that are very under the power of suggestion on a massive scale, and not thinking twice about doing harm to others. So these people that have done their studies um, on how to manipulate the herd,
Yep.
and they've been executing the results of that research on the masses. Dude, I just watched a video just a couple days ago at random. I didn't watch the whole thing, but this one nurse was like, yeah, I've killed a whole bunch of patients on purpose. And she put it on like TikTok, and then it's like, yeah, we're gonna investigate you, dummy. And then she got like, in court, arrested and in court, and it was like she was bragging how she purposely killed like senior citizens, and felt good about it.
That's wild.
So there's crazy effers out there, broken, that walk among us, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And welcome, Zealberg. What's up, bro? It's been a long time, man.
Been a long time.
How you doing, dude? Yeah, you sound good, man. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. And you?
Not bad, bro. I'm glad. I'm gonna put my camera on for a second and say hello. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you came. I've been telling Silus and Reagan I wanted to get you over and have you on.
Cool. Yeah. Serial killers. Right?
Silus was telling us you were telling him about the statistics for.
Yeah, well, it was a stat I came across that, like, I think 90% of the recorded cases, occurred between like 1970 and 1999.
Yeah,
so
it's
a
insane
phenomenon. It's and you jump down the rabbit hole into a given case and the grisly details, and it leaves you sort of dumbfounded that a human being will be capable of doing this kind of thing. But I think you're hinting at there that some of the stuff is controlled.
Yeah,
a lot of military connections.
It seems like a lot of military connections, and then also a lot of it doesn't seem to be done by one person, if it is done at all. I mean, I tend to think most of them there is some sort of murder or something happening. It's like a mixed reality sort of situation where there's like an op happening, but there's also people unaware of the op happening at the same time, which seems to be almost how all of the psychological operations play out nowadays.
Bro, you have also, if I could just throw another side quest in there. By the way, welcome, Zealberg.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, brother.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, I mean, another one just to throw in there is like the mafia.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you even get into things like, you know, the one famous one, like Iceman or whatever.
And Iceman, yeah.
And by the way, he just happens to be, you know, wears a small hat from time to time. That's just, you know, that's the main mafia here in the U.S. They don't talk about it very much, but like mafia stuff is, are they serial killers? Like, what's the title of a serial killer? You know what I mean?
Well, see, I was actually having this discussion with my girlfriend yesterday because I was like, I don't know if they consider hitmen or assassins serial killers because they're doing it for supposedly a financial reason. When they're doing it, if that is the case, it could be a ritual reason, and we're just not being told that. But I don't know. Does anyone know if that's if it does matter? I mean, I don't know why they would designate it as something different. It seems like it should be the same.
Well, sending a message isn't
Yeah,
that
right.
very common in the quote unquote movies? You know, we got to distinguish between movies and what happens in the field. But
Well, speaking of movies, Sharon Tate, right before whatever happens to her, she's ritually murdered in a film, which is, I think it's called The Eye of the Devil or 13.
Yeah.
It's a very Crowleyan inspired film where she's a ritual murder victim by at some elite castle in England, right?
You also had is it Rosemary's Baby as well? I'm pretty sure she was in that too.
Yeah.
So you have all of these very strange, you could say occult or macabre films that she was in, and obviously she just turns up dead in this you could say this unpredictable, freak killing by the Manson family, and of course her husband as well. Polanski, I believe his name is. He is an absolute violent cretin.
Yeah, he gets convicted for some sort of like almost like pedophilia, I guess it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that was exactly the charge, and he has to leave the United States, but he's still allowed to make films. But there's that connection again. You have trafficking in one way or another with children, ritual murder, and it seems like there's no individual in any of these types of killings. It's always like groups of individuals.
bro, I want to bring up something dark that is maybe was memory hold with some, but during the, I'm gonna have to use my words carefully based on the censorship platform, but Hillary and emails and hey, we're going to the party. Don't forget to bring my hammer as well as my inhaler because you know I get excited when we are doing things ritually with others. That's a thing that is very, very, very real. And from a technical IT perspective, those emails were verified as incredibly authentic. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm trying to be careful with your channels.
Yeah, I'm the same. There's a lot of you mentioned about the those who wear the hats that are very small with the Hodel case. This is something else you find with serial killers, especially the major ones. Even even that one back in the early 1900s. What was his name?
H.H. Holmes?
No, it wasn't H.H. Holmes. It was the one after him. I think his name was Fish, something Fish. But anyway, he was another one when he did his killings. I think Gacy was included in this. He would basically, it was almost like a kosher killing. He would drain the blood would be drained from the victim.
Like
and
Albert Fish.
Yes, Albert Fish. Yeah, I think it was Albert Fish. Might have been another one. There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of them.
Or
But yeah,
Constance Fisher. There's the two fish. The two fish I can find.
oh, the two fish, yeah. No Piscean symbolism there, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's something else you would find with that. Another thing to mention is that in the Hodel case, along with the Zodiac case, is that there is a lot of course it's misspelled, but there's a lot of how could you say,
Twilight language?
no, connections to this idea of paradise and this idea of other Kabbalistic things, and I'll just leave it there because I don't use language that could be, caustic to your channel.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting even that I thought you were talking about H.H. Holmes, because if we think of that, there's another supposed doctor, surgeon, who's the book about him is The Devil in the White City. And that's based around Chicago, which seems to be a center point for a lot of these operations.
Well,
And that's happening during the World Fair.
Speaking of John Wayne Gacy, I remember, looking into that case a little bit at one point, and like there was rumors of a network of like a trafficking network that he might have been a part of that was running through construction, possibly, and also running into the criminal underworld.
Yeah, we had mentioned that right before you came on. There was like something called Project Delta that was trafficking kids for like snuff films.
Yes,
that a whole group was connected to. Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, and I had said before, like they had found 12 sets of keys to his house, and he was out of the state when 2 or 3 of his victims were supposedly murdered. So it was like other people were using that house who were all part of the same little group he was in, and then they chose him as their scapegoat.
Okay.
These are also blackmail rings as well. You saw the same thing with Epstein. And there's even that belief by a lot of the victims of Epstein that he is in fact not dead, that they actually couldn't kill him because he knew too much. Moreover, as well, they stated that he was an undisclosed Mossad agent. So you have and of course Gacy as well, prior to his incarceration and being caught. He was actually pictured with several Democratic politicians in the area, and the wider senatorial circuit. And I believe he was also photographed with was it the president at the time? I forget now.
Yeah, you're right. His wife, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was either running for something or he already had a position, right? What was it?
I think he was like the local union, head of the local union in Chicago, like
something like
that.
Something like that. And he definitely had he definitely was trying to be a politician.
He was an assistant precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate. That's how he started at age 18. And it mentions something else here.
Yo, when you stare into the abyss too long, and it might look back at you. There's some real darkness, man. It kind of hurts my heart when I dig deep into a lot of the
absolutely
specific.
But I mean, I think that's the actual. It's like, it's if you look at it as a weapon, as a kind of socio-psychological weapon, it's extremely potent, powerful, dark. Like it has a grip on the kind of national psyche or even the local psyche around the area where this kind of stuff happens, because like it's like anti-human to think that a human is capable of carrying out these deeds. It's
Zeal, what this reminds me of is that experiment where, and this is very public, they had people come in and they were like, every time the person gives a wrong answer, hit the electrical button, and it like electrifies the person on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And whether that person answers right or wrong, and it would amp up the electricity. You guys are aware of the study. I can't remember the name of the study.
The Milgram experiment.
Yes.
Milligram,
So a regular person, they'd be like, and he's like, I don't want to hit this. It'll kill the guy. And they're like, hit it because of authority or whatever, peer pressure, whatever. And they hit it. And the guy's like, ah. Anyway, that experiment, you guys know it. I find that incredibly interesting. How do you, and then you have the military, just all militaries, like how do you get someone to pressure them into hurting someone else? And that's those experiments in the military, etc., shows that you can get a quote unquote normal person to cause pain and suffering and perhaps death or whatever to another person. That's pretty wild to think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've seen war videos.
The very disturbing aspect of it is that people take pleasure, like a sadistic type of pleasure out of inflicting pain and even death on somebody. You know, that's how they roll. Like it's like Marquis de Sade. It's like they have that. I know, like there's this famous, infamous couple in England, Maura Hindley and Ian Brady, that they murdered some children back in the day, like the 60s, maybe 70s. And he had reference to Marquis de Sade, who was, I don't know if I haven't read his stuff, but I'm vaguely familiar with him. He was I think a French kind of Parisian. He wrote a book back in, I don't know, it could be like the 18th century or whatever, that was, you know, extolling the virtues of sadism, deriving pleasure from pain, essentially. So I suppose if you look at it that way, pleasure, it ties in with all this other concept of inverting things, like taking pleasure from pain as an absolute inversion.
Was that the Moore murders? Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah,
exactly.
The Moore. Yeah,
Moore murders, yeah. There's another, as you're on the connections, another famous British serial killer was a guy by the name of Peter Sutcliffe, who was otherwise known as the Yorkshire Ripper. So he murdered, I don't know, kind of like 8, 10, 15 women around Yorkshire in the like 80s, early 80s maybe.
Is that the one they set up the whole task force to try to find?
Yeah. But after he is caught and is incarcerated, he's pictured with none other than Jimmy Savile. So Jimmy Savile used to go and visit Peter Sutcliffe in prison. Jimmy Savile is another dark character. And it's like, you know, there's some kind of fucked up stuff going on, you know. But I think so some of them seem to be connected, but with them, like, it's mentally relieving to think that, okay, some of this is a psyop, or some of these people are military. But what's kind of almost more disturbing is, you know, you get these guys like, you know, trying to think of some of the big names like Jeffrey Dahmer, who seem to be just actual freaks of human nature. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think even Dahmer, you can connect him to an intelligence group in one way or another, whether it's through like a father, like a family member or something, or through like somewhere where he stayed at one point. But it doesn't mean he didn't do the things that he did. And I think that is the darker aspect, is when the people actually involved seem to enjoy what they're doing, and for some reason because I'm like I said, I don't think everything here is a total op, but even if it's a mixed op, there are still, you know, they're still committing certain crimes, whether or not they're committing all of them. That's like, I think, the bigger question, because it seems like a lot of the times they may do a few of the murders, and then there's other people involved who never get caught.
Well, have you spoken about Son of Sam?
And that's a perfect example. That's David Berkowitz is a perfect example, and he was saying that, and that connects us right back to the Process Church.
Yeah. So there seems to be an awful lot of question marks around David Berkowitz, around that case. There's a lot of leads going off in different directions. A lot of kind of I don't know, some dark stuff, spooky stuff about who he was connected to and what other groups are, you know. There's a whole rabbit hole there around that guy. But
Yeah, and the Process Church, they get all into both. It's more like a, because they say they worship Lucifer and Christ, but it's also like a apocalyptic sort of worship to where they're trying to almost bring back the combination of the two as a singular figure. It reminds me of like redemption through sin.
Oh, I just saw an awesome movie, anime movie, Killer of Killers. It's with the predators, you know, the alien predators.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah, there's like the 6th one or 7th one.
It's awesome if you haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that was on Hulu or something, right?
Yes, recently, the last 2 weeks, maybe week or two. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's really fun. It's really cool. But you know, the head predator dude is like, you know, his goal and all their goals is to be the killer of killers.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting when you're looking at these names, how many of them have a weird sort of similarity, and how much occult symbolism is just in the names. I mean, not even just whether they have a serial killer nickname or not, but just their regular names.
What's the same with political shooters, lone wolf shooters? They always have the 3 names.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, so many Rays in here. We just have Terry Blair, like Tony Blair.
Flair.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of Grays, tons of Browns. We have Bundys, we have Bunday and Bundy. I never heard of Bunday. I'm Triple H with H.H.H. Holmes.
Yeah.
James Ray Cable, Cabal. I mean, you can go on and on with this stuff. It's insane how you don't see many like original names that aren't sort of generic looking. Like you don't see my last name on there, which there are very few people with my actual last name.
And let me ask this random question: are they all white dudes? Because why are they just trying to push only white dudes be doing? Only white dudes be doing stuff.
I mean, there are some African Americans who are famous serial, I guess they're at least accused serial killers. Who knows what the hell is actually happening in those cases?
Most of them are of European persuasion, and funnily enough, most of them are actually of either Eastern or Central European persuasion. I think it's well into the 90% range. Gacy, for example, was of Polish. He was of Polish descent.
Yeah.
Bundy. What about Bundy? Bundy had some weird familial, like.
Well, that Bundy name is one of the 13 families. I think from the the black nobility, like really? The Illuminati bloodline type families that are named in a couple of those books. They say he has no relation to that family, but
Bundy's from Borgia.
By the way, I was kidding.
Borgia is one of the 13.
I was kidding, not kidding, but I'm just being silly.
Oh, of course.
This is all just brainstorming, anyways. No one's making any solidified. I know this for a fact.
Like her husband Ray. How many Rays have I already gone past? Oh, I guess they were. Like 12. This is a couple committing it to. Yeah, I mean, Corona, Juan Corona.
There was a guy. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Ian something or other. He wrote a couple of books on serial killers. Like when we were growing up, the serial killer phenomenon was like in the popular culture. It was sort of I don't want to say promoted.
It was made for media.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Like, I mean, it was like that is what everyone was into and watching every show. It was the ultimate climactic, dramatic.
Oh,
You
Jake
kind
ju-
of had that Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro. I think that's from the 70s. He was kind of like, I'm going to clean up this city kind of thing. So it almost had a righteous twist to the narrative.
Yeah, that gets into
That's
like
what Batman is.
Yeah, it gets like program vigilantism, and then you get like sort of political assassins that start coming out of that. And I think it kind of almost even connects to like what's his name? Whoever was said to have killed Lennon, John Lennon in the park. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had the Mockingbird. No, was it
Catcher in the Rye?
Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, he had been MK Ultra'd. Some of these people might have been in those types of MK Ultra'd or parents or children of military intelligence stuff, or some of these people. I'm just looking at, like prostitutes and stuff. It's like, again, reminds me of Taxi Driver, where it's like, I'm going to do the world a favor and get rid of these gross prostitutes. It's almost like an incel type of thing. Or like gay stuff, like gay dudes, and like, I'm killing these gay dudes after I do gay stuff with them because they're self-hating. So not all of it is potentially, see, they may be influenced or programmed or trained or to get activated. And some are aristocrats, members of the aristocrat class, just doing their self-sacrifice, loosh, getting, I feel, powerful, because they've all been wrecked too as kids. They totally wrecked as children. So turning them into murderers is pretty standard in my opinion. So there's a bit of, I don't think it's a one size fits all, but there's a couple categories here for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But there was, I remember reading the book on it, and there was a couple of telltale signs, or like a couple of factors that were present in an awful lot of serial killer cases. So one of the big ones is people who harmed animals when they were growing up. They harm animals. They cut up the neighborhood cats or dogs or something, or they're like, they actively go out to harm animals. It's like
do you think that's real though, bro? Do you think that's real or part of the?
I really don't know, man.
Part of the story.
To be honest with you, having kind of, I don't know, from my own personal dealing with people and some of the people I've worked with over time, particularly in the prison service, I would say it's absolutely real. Unfortunately.
Okay. I mean, I know the messages,
but I don't know. It's not to say that there's not also a psyop going on, like parallel. But the three things were bedwetting, head injury, and harming animals. So the bedwetting
and starting fires, I think, too, is another one.
Really?
Are you guys describing my childhood right now? Shoot, I need to. I loved all the.
Well,
obviously
that was the point, Ronan. The whole point of that was they had to generate the image of the serial killer to be what like the childhood of the natural American is. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's what propagates it. That's what actually made it. It creates the extra levels. It creates all the other stories. It's been projected out there in the atmosphere. It's in the radio waves.
Reagan, let me ask you.
Start to imitate.
Let me ask you a straight question, Reagan. Do you think the serial killer phenomenon is like a fake psyop scenario, or do you think some of them are real and some of them are not real, or do you think it just doesn't exist at all? It's a fabrication.
I think the way it's been, the way the stories have been told is fabrication. I think the nuances are either cover-ups for or psyops for a particular reason, or some of them are protected and they find scapegoats. It's like finding a mentally challenged person and going, that's the killer, and it's actually some aristocratic son or something, or kids. I think it's a mix. I can't do a one size fits all.
Here's something I would say on that is
one size fits all. Go ahead, Saz.
But I don't trust anything, and especially when I see patterns, I see psyop patterns, and then I think I look at this thing from more of a macro, and as well from a spiritual, as well from the dark arts, that there's dark arts groups. So that's just let you know that's the lens. I don't see lone wolves, especially
Well,
when it gets Oculus and
let me ask
Netflix.
you a question.
Mhm.
Let me ask you a question, and like it's a kind of a sensitive question in a way. Like, so I don't mean it as a sort of a, but I'm just being devil's advocate here, right? Due to the actual the heinous nature of these crimes, right, and the kind of dark, association with all this stuff. Like, do you think there's a mechanism there where one's mind seeks to, you know, create a situation where, okay, this stuff never happened. It's a psyop, as a kind of an escape from that darkness, if you know what I mean. That it's easier to believe and nicer to believe that this stuff never happened at all, or it's
Yeah,
a manipulation.
in my
Do you know?
in my opinion, I'm not being. For me, I'm only speak for myself. I'm not being naive. I don't think these heinous acts did not take place, but I think the actual story is misleading on the actual narratives in a lot of these cases. I believe in massively darkness. There are groups that work together and they've been around a while, and there's nepotism involved, and they do the darkest of dark arts that anyone can sit and think of. Mainly these killings in this type of way.
Isn't it strange though, because the motives that they always ascribe, now you mentioned a very astute point, Reagan, is that essentially, this could have been any of our childhoods, right? Bedwetting or things as innocuous as that. And what it's doing is it's almost creating like what we saw with the event in 2020, or even, dare I say, like what was going on with the IRA bombings, or during that period of time, the Troubles here. I mean, if you had an Irish accent, in the 1980s or 90s, everyone was, oh my God, fearful, right? If you supported Celtic here, which is a sort of Irish Catholic football team, you were also looked upon with a bit of disdain, right, or suspicion. And it was the same with the likes of, for example, post 2001, with if you were Arab, with if you were of a certain ethnic persuasion or religious persuasion, it was the same thing. So, but the event in 2020 was basically the prime example of this, the prime parallel, which is that literally they created the most innocuous symptoms. And sometimes you didn't even need symptoms. That was one of the symptoms, strangely enough. And you were provided with the label asymptomatic, and you were provided with the label of, well, everyone was universally, you could have it. So is that there was this suspicion, and all it generated was a mass hysteria, mass formation psychosis, a sort of mob mentality. And of course, it's very difficult to firstly derail that mob vis-a-vis reason from the ground up. But the authority figures, it's very easy to control that mob and steer it. And moreover, just finally, last point, is that, do you notice their motives are always very simplistic? In fact, their motives are sort of prefigured by the police force. This is at the time, it was a very novel phenomenon. This idea of the serial killing, which is the serial killer, which is this idea of a crime which is done with very, you could say, occult, which it normally is, but very predictable behavioral patterns and predictable patterns and hallmarks within the crime. So it's almost designed to have an air of showmanship around it. It's designed to be a spectacle of shock and awe, which also belies the probable origin points of the serial killer as a phenomenon. And then moreover as well, the serial killing, the crime scene construction, the killing itself, some of them are very meticulous, they're surgically precise, yet the motives are or you could say atavistic, which is sort of primitive. It's almost laughably simplistic. And of course, all the motives are prefigured by the police. Totally contradictory.
So, Silus, let me chime in, and I appreciate that, brother. That 2020. So, are these the cycle of serial killings between the 70s to the 2000, right? Then led to other things, and then leads, riots or whatever, right? Or mass formation you're talking about makes it easier. You're refreshing. You're traumatizing the subject, which is the populace, right? And then you give them the power of suggestion. And then now we're 2020, the fear that the entire world is going to die based on the virus is going to kill every single human species on the plane, right? That's part of it. Before it was serial killers going to get everybody, your neighbor's going to get you, that type of stuff. And that is all to build up to these particular agendas to now where we are here now, right? So that's a very good point. The mass formation, it's mass hypnosis, and it's pretty interesting because it works. It's wild to sit and observe this, that it works because Zeal, you're asking me those questions, and I'm like, I'm looking at what is being popularized in the narratives, because there's a lot of other stuff that happens that doesn't get the news media, but certain events and activities do. So that's for a purpose, and that's to push that mass formation.
Well, I think a lot of it is like what Michael Hoffman would call it, a revelation of the method, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, he gives the example of in his book in Twilight Language of when he's talking about Son of Sam, one of the eyewitnesses, I think, or he's talking about Son of Sam, and then he's also bringing up the Holmes shooting at the Aurora movie theater. And I mean, even just right there, so you have Son of Sam saying he's in a group of occult individuals who are being passed around, and then you have this Holmes shooter who's also seemingly has the same last name of America's, or at least the most widely known first serial killer, H.H. Holmes.
Chris, real quick, serial killers happened, and then it was school shooters, and then it was riots. So there's this literal. Sorry, I just had to.
No, absolutely. It's like all of these things, all of these names, even the Batman movie, which not H.H. Holmes. See, I'm even getting confused now, because that's the point of this all. Is like you get so wrapped up in the Twilight language of it all that you don't even see that you're being initiated into something and it's being normalized in your mind as something that is just happens when it doesn't just happen in a lot of these cases. And on the screen here, I have Henry Alexander Murray. He winds up being, he studies from psychology under Alfred North Whitehead. And I think it's interesting that the philosophy or psychology that is taught to him is called process philosophy. And he also went to Groton, or the Groton School. And this is actually the school in The Catcher in the Rye that they, I think is what is it? It says it at the bottom that he hypothesizes that this is, I think, an intelligence sort of a school where like CIA agents are groomed. But yeah, where is it? It's right. Yeah. So the Wooten School and J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye may have been based on Groton, and Robert Little's The Company. CIA officers are alumni of Groton. So you have like all of these individuals coming out of this school that's a very expensive school in the Northeast who are either participating somehow in these rituals, which is also interesting. You can connect this all over the place. The rabbit hole never ends. And that's almost the point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is as well for a lot of people. It's even criminologists and amateur sleuths. I guess I would be in the latter category. You can get heavily wrapped up in these cases. I mean, the Hodel case I find just quite fascinating because it ties into so much, and it has so many. It's multi-layered as well. Like what we're saying here. You have this connection to the wider intelligence agencies. I mean, these things are clear psyops. One that comes to mind is Sutcliffe. There was a very poor imitation of a northern accent, a northern English accent, that was sort of sent into the police supposedly from, the killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, and it was played constantly throughout Yorkshire, on tannoys, in factories. It was, you couldn't get away from it. It was drilled into people. And then you had, at the same time, a hotline that was opened. Of course, the local government, the regional and national government, the police themselves knew what would happen, right? And you had wives that had arguments with their husbands the night before, and they would phone into the hotline still enraged, still with seeing red, and they would claim that their husband was the Ripper or something like that, right? So you had a lot of that, and
Oh, chicks, man, chicks.
it was this sort of witch craze as well, right? So they knew that would occur. I mean, this is well understood. There's a historical precedent for this, stretching all the way back to basically the 16th century of the witch craze. So they understand this fully. They understand mass formation psychosis. They use it to their advantage. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb and state here that the entire serial killing, even school shooting, psychological operations, that they were designed to psychologically gauge and psychologically even conform and condition the populace to this sort of very normalized pattern of mass formation psychosis.
Yeah.
And it's been a long, gradual process up to this point. It's been a progressive conditioning through these various gauntlets, these various layers and filters, cognitive filters of psychological operation.
I totally agree. And I think it's that because they're doing these constant trauma-inducing events that are becoming normalized, it also helps them move the population in whichever direction they wish. Like it's a very good method, a very good way to just strip people of their rights and make new laws without any questions being asked.
Oh, bro, every time I see a white van and the guy's wearing like Skechers or white shoes, or I'm eyeballing that person, man. White vans are off the list for me, being near me. Chris, if you were gonna get taken, I have my answer. Would you want them to have a British accent, a German accent, a South African accent, or an American accent?
Yeah, South African.
No way, dude.
I don't know, man. It depends. Are they white South Africans?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe South African. I don't know.
Oh, that's the Die Hard. That's the bad guys from Die Hard, dude. South Africans. You don't want them.
He wasn't Russian in Die Hard?
Maybe. I don't know. I think I'll answer I'd rather have like a British. I'd rather have a British accent, because at least I know I'm getting handled by like a gentleman, whether they are or not. They sound like a gentleman.
Yeah, but they might be the worst of the worst, because you got the largest Masonic lodge is out of Britain. No,
I don't want an American amateur, or like Germans are too dark. I think they're just way too dark, dude.
Well, I think the Americans are quite dark too, because I think most of those guys are probably gone. They're like straight up psychopaths themselves who are working like in wet works and whatnot.
Yeah, and they're amateurs. They're not surgical with it. For me, I would say British accent. I would go with that. Anyway, I don't mean to digress, guys.
It might be a rough British accent.
Oh no, it's
And-
gotta be like a high society,
oh, I
not
see. Right. Okay.
not someone, not like from Snatch or whatever, not a Guy Ritchie movie. No one from a Guy Ritchie movie, please.
Not
With that-
not from my council estate.
Right. I need someone with a British person with good teeth, so I know I'm in good hands. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's a rare commodity. That's like finding a diamond in the rough, a needle in the haystack, man.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm still on I'm still on that school page that the Catcher in the Rye apparently had based the school in it on, and I just noticed there's a league out of that school called the Founders League. Now that brings up the Founders cult.
The
Yes.
Finders cult. I mean, it's close enough in my opinion. It's, especially with all the connections it has to psychological operations, MK Ultra, Ted Kaczynski, the guy who that last psychologist I was just showing you, who also did the psychological breakdown of Hitler, apparently, like that was commissioned by the United States.
Oh, Zealberg, come back! Hope I didn't chase you away with my poorly timed joke.
He might have got booted out. He'll be back, and I'll check it and make sure I keep an eye on it.
He might be heading to bed. It's quite late here as well. Yeah, the Finders cult, the Ted Kaczynski too. There was a really interesting film on that many years back. I forget who actually starred in it now, but it was a superb, I guess you would say, a biopic. But Ted Kaczynski is a very interesting character because, of course, his book, I forget what it's called now. Is it The Technology in the Industrial Society or something like that? I mean,
it's something close to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he totally on point, right? What he stated in that book is coming about. It's here really. I mean, even last time I read it, which was probably about, I'd say 12 years ago or something now, he actually predicted the whole woke thing, which itself is another psychological operation, as is the Q thing, the MAGA thing, all of that psychological operation. And
well, this is the guy who apparently had dosed him, and this is the guy from Harvard. And apparently this guy's girlfriend or wife, or I don't know if they were dating or what, she was younger than him. She winds up drowning in 2 feet of water.
oh,
Yeah. So he also becomes, at 33 years old, the head of, or the assistant director at Harvard, the Harvard Psychological Clinic, which is like just weird with the numerology popping up.
I'm actually surprised she didn't drown in our soup, our chicken soup.
Yeah, I know. And they said that it was likely a suicide. Yeah, it was his wife.
Oh, Timothy Leary as well.
Yeah, he was working with Murray supervised Leary.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's also with Kaczynski. Don't they find him in Scapegoat Forest or something like that? Or what is the name of the place they find him? It's like, it's insane.
I think it was Sherwood Forest, not Scapegoat Forest.
Wasn't there some weird name of the... Why do I remember there being some crazy ass name people were talking about that his cabin was next to?
I'm unsure. I thought it was in Montana somewhere. His cabin.
Let me see.
Yeah, near Lincoln, pardon, Montana.
Where we got his cabin at?
Yeah, and while you're looking that up, his manifesto made a lot of sense. I'm just saying.
Lincoln, Montana. Kaczynski.
Yeah, industrial society and its future. Yeah, I mean, he makes quite a lot of sense in it. Of course, you can clearly see that the individual was most likely. Well, he was most likely insane. Insane from the psychological processing, you could say, that was done vis-a-vis the MK Ultra program.
Yeah, it's interesting how he even was predicting the genetic engineering and everything like that.
And evidently, the building was empty, similar to other buildings that.
Wait, you're talking about You just switched from Unabomber to what's it called, to Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh, isn't this? They're not one and the same.
That means Theodore was the other guy's name, right? What's the guy's name who did the Oklahoma City, or supposedly did the Oklahoma City? Is it Theodore? No, it's not that.
I thought they were Unabomber in Oklahoma City, or I thought it was Ted Kaczynski.
Oh, no, that was Timothy McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh. There you go.
Oh shoot! Sorry, guys.
Oh, all good, bro. I mean, that's the names they just get all tangled up, and that's, I think, the point of a lot of this.
Well, and that's why they're all very similar stories too. It's to keep that conflagrated, convoluted narrative is always the same, but yet, right, it's the names are slightly different and the settings, different state, different city, different whatever, but yet it's like
Reagan,
all
they
the
got
same
me,
telltale signs.
Reagan, they got me on that one.
Well, what the hell is his name again? Not the Unabomber, the Oklahoma City one. It's McVeigh. He's outside of Waco when Waco's going down, apparently giving out giving out pamphlets.
Yeah.
And watching everything go down.
Pamphlets.
Yeah.
It's gonna really bother me that I can't find what the hell I was thinking about the name of the. I don't know if it was exactly the portion of the forest or the woods, wherever the hell he was, found with his little hut, or it was right next to it, but it was super strange. Like, the name was like bizarrely, it was like something like Scapegoat Forest, but it's not on the wiki. I'm not gonna take a deep dive right now on it. We know that there's a bunch of shady stuff that went on with him.
Oh, and all the names, like, we can look up the names all you want. Who's to say, like, with wiki pages?
Yeah, that they didn't. Someone didn't change it.
Yeah. So
this is even interesting that he gifted his cabin to Charlotte Hodelman, another doctor, the angel of death row. It's crazy. They really are, like, always doctors or butchers, and I mean, even like back to the beginning with Jack the Ripper, they were calling him the Leather Apron, I think, for a while. Which should be telling.
Yes. It's interesting with Jack the Ripper too, because there were rumors at the time that the police knew exactly who he was, but they were creating in the media false suspects. They were they were feeding the media false pieces of evidence, false details, things like that. And if you look into the Metropolitan Police at the time, almost 100% of them were Masons. In fact, the police chief, the chief constable of the Metropolitan Police himself was a high-ranking Mason above the Blue Lodge. So.
Yep. And it almost, and I think someone had done like they retraced the steps of what the narrative was of what happened, and it would have almost been like the police would have had to let it occur, if that makes sense. Almost like they were stopping themselves from catching up to the guy.
Yes.
Or there were multiple.
Well, that's a potential. If you look into a lot of this, like George Hodel, how did one man do that? It becomes almost ludicrous, because it's not necessarily just the killing, the whatever else they do with processing the body, the corpse at that point, and then of course lifting the dead body. Remember, dead bodies become heavier as well.
Yeah.
Lifting that, well, within the Hodel case, he actually cut her up there. It's been theorized. A few of the lipstick murders, Steve Hodel believes that the butchering took place in the Franklin house in the basement. With the Black Dahlia case, it appears, based on forensic evidence at the time, so take that for what it's worth, because at the time it was rather primitive, they state that she was probably cut up there, if I recall correctly. So you're having to carry a now heavier cadaver into a car, you're going to a built-up residential area, albeit at night. You're having to evade the law enforcement. You're having to evade also as well pedestrians, and then meticulously construct this crime scene in the dark on your own. When you start to factor in all of these things and think about it, it becomes almost laughable that only one individual is part of this operation in the case of Hodel, or any of these operations really, because they're very complex, and they would take at least a minimum of 2 people. In the case of Hodel, I think he had an accomplice. I think he had probably maybe another 2 accomplices. There's also, Steve Hodel mentions that Elizabeth Short, she's stated to have went on a date. This is from a witness. I think it was a lieutenant in the American Armed Forces, and he was stationed in LA at the time, or one of the military or navy bases near it. And he went on a date with Elizabeth Short. And Elizabeth Short and him, of course, were in the cinema, so they leave the cinema, obviously arm in arm, partially embracing each other. And Elizabeth Short tells him that she spies this car that has been tailing her, stalking her, and it's a jaded lover, right? A jaded ex-boyfriend. And so the lieutenant and her go to his car to obviously expedite themselves from that potential situation. But interestingly, when they get into the car, there's 4 men that jump out. Now, of course, one of those men was most definitely George Hodel, because that was the jaded ex-boyfriend of the Black Dahlia victim, Elizabeth Short. And so Steve Hodel found all of this out. So there are instances where it seems as though George Hodel had, well, at least another 3 accomplices with him, engaged in that very nefarious blood sport, really. So yeah, I think a lot of them, they bear those same hallmarks, but of course it never comes out in the media, because like what you're saying, it's the same thing with a lone wolf. Completely ludicrous. You don't get lone wolves. They're pack animals. But they want to put that forward because it makes it simplistic, and it allows them a degree of control of the narrative. Because if it's one person, you can more easily simplify or steer the motives of one individual, a lone wolf, than you can with, a group of individuals. They have competing interests, competing motivations. They have, overlapping motivations. It gets quite complicated when you have more than one murderer.
Yeah. You could also then sway public opinion behind that person to support or the opposite of support. Like, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess want to sacrifice that individual as a scapegoat to release their collective tension and anxieties. I mean, we're kind of seeing the opposite now, where they're throwing support behind, like they're trying to get society to throw support behind the kid, the Luigi Mangione, who supposedly shot the what's it called, the health insurance guy. So you see how then they're using it in an opposite way. Instead of using it for fear, they're actually getting people to sort of push for that sort of behavior and vigilantism. And I don't know if you just saw the comments with just a guy mentioning Paul Weissapal,
Yes.
that image I just brought up of Timothy McVeigh.
I'm looking at
Yeah,
up.
they do look. I've seen this before recently. They do look incredibly alike. I have no idea what's going on with that.
Yeah, they do actually. It's quite uncanny.
I mean, I don't know,
They do.
because isn't that guy Weissapal a Secret Service agent or something?
I believe he is. Yeah. Yep.
See, I wouldn't put someone who I had in an operation in the Secret Service. That's the only thing.
Tampa special agent.
I'd be like, yeah, you need to go away forever. But I
Yeah.
mean, they are brazen, so.
Oh no, they're totally brazen. Look at the, not meaning to go into, because this is up on YouTube, but if you look at a lot of the school shootings, you actually saw the same recurring figures in, school shootings that
The
spanned
same
like 10 years.
chiefs,
Yeah,
same deputies, the same arresting officers. There's a bunch of stuff.
Crisis actors.
Pretty wild. I think what you were saying, Silas, and Chris, you kind of both were talking about as far as like it being more than one guy. I think that's good credibility for the modern time to totally disenfranchise all major figures of history, past 100 years ago, let's say. So as far as like your Shakespeare's, your Da Vinci's, your Plato's, your, all your master mathematicians, physicists, and so on, to suggest that they actually did all of their work themselves, when if you actually take into account how long it would have took one person to do all of those things, it would be many, many lifetimes, right? And so even in these small cases of serial killers and other various works, and like the Hodel, the Zodiac Killer cases, and all the stories around it, behind it, and all these different people, just the fact that they try and project it as it was one person did all of these things, when in fact the only possible way it could have been done is with multiple parties involved, and they even show that, I think, in media all the time. Like the latest Hercules with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the entire purpose of that movie was showing that Hercules wasn't just this masterful man of might that took on dragons and beasts and such. He actually had this secret team, and they had a whole story, and they all knew the story, and there was a whole thing to it. And it was like truth in movies, in a sense, in that kind of way, where it lays it out for you. That
Well, yeah, think about like Seven Psychopaths. There's like tons of. There's a bunch of different ones Ryan Reynolds is in. I feel like. Like
I think he's kind of like that character. That's who he
he seems
in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Deadpool, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Oh man.
Well, because all these actors, that's what, to me, all of the serial killers are just as much actors as any actors in Hollywood are. And the actual personas they play on the silver screen, and the personas that they play in the tabloids, and the personas they play in the actual world are actually all already predetermined, written scripts, setups. The person playing the character may not even actually be that person, So like, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of all this stuff, like, it's a huge hodgepodge of nonsense and bullshit. you know, and I say it all the time, but I say it because I learned it in the fraternity world where you hide all of your debauchery with philanthropy. So, and that's what you see in like the major media move in the last decade has been all making that like Batman, vigilante, yada yada character be the good guy, right? So you've been molding a society of, you know, good morality and all this other stuff into the complete opposite. You know, it's a huge psychological operation that spans hundreds of years, if not thousands. There's like thousands of moving components. So just to isolate one thing and be like, oh, it's this, like, I think that's impossible. And it's made to be that way. And it wouldn't matter anyways, because figuring out what one cog in the, you know, whole machine is, well, that's just the one cog. You have to look at them all to see the whole picture.
Some would argue that the Joker is the good guy and wants to peel away all of the phoniness and in people and go, let's see who you really are. That's quite interesting in this serial killer talk when it comes to when one peels away all their civility and social traditions, norms, whatever. Are they a fabrication, and are what is a person truly? That's kind of like the Joker's kind of mission statement in a way. I know I didn't probably say that great the best, but that's kind of the paraphrased.
I think
At the
it's
same-
already built into the story.
Yeah,
You
and
see
that
it, you
is,
see it.
I mean, at the same time, too, the Joker's also supposed to be like, you know, especially the or Christopher Nolan and John Nolan version. I guess both brothers probably worked on the script, I'm assuming. That Joker, like he says it, I think outright in the film that Batman completes him. He and Batman are intrinsically linked. So if in that case, you almost look at him like the shadow of an individual. It's like basically kind of pushing people to see that they have that side of themselves. But the problem is, I think with the Nolan version, the lesson kind of gets lost there, and more so becomes people start copying the Joker's actions and want to be the Joker instead of like I think the first one, Joaquin Phoenix, was a little bit more like revelatory and sort of like a look at what actual evil could be and what could cause it and things like that.
Oh man, that character was great, especially the laughing because everything is absurd and nothing matters, and it's a great big cosmic joke.
Yeah. And we didn't see the same copycats come out of that film as we did with the Dark Knight one, obviously, or whatever the hell was going on. Obviously, I don't think James Holmes did that all by himself. I think he was being messed with by some sort of program that was going on, whether it was Voice of Skull sort of stuff or some sort of program he was in college, because I know his dad worked for, I think it was, he worked for some huge government laboratory, and he himself was working on all this sort of like high-end physics, like time reversal, which is strange because then we get Tenet from the same guy who brought us The Dark Knight.
Do you find that so all of these heinous acts of I don't think it's individuals, I think they're all part of a group, at least the ones that get notoriety. I got it.
Well, before you on, I wouldn't say James Holmes like as someone who's in the group. I would say he's more of like a scapegoat.
Oh, Patsy's
Yeah, for the group, yeah.
I think there's a lot of patsies. Some of those people in those kind of like handler helper types probably take the fall for sure. But these acts, especially the ritualized ones, on an esoteric level, on a macro level, does it assist them in gaining the loosh, and in some ways somehow helps them, I don't even know, gain some sort of Akashic powers in something? Does what we, I'm asking kind of the big questions here. Does any of it matter? Does what you do harm or no harm, or live a boring life, quote unquote boring, um, good life, whatever? Does any of it matter? Are these people just broken and don't even think on the? I think a lot of it's ritualized for sure because they have a belief system, and I think some are just hurt, and hurt people in a way.
I definitely think they're getting something out of whatever the hell is going on. And I think a lot of it gets into genetics and gets into like why some of the cannibalism is even taking place that seems to take place. And there's some sort of transfer of energy and desire to experience, I guess, like altered states through whatever the hell these rituals actually are.
I mean, we're all vampires in a way. We eat food and we take energy from it.
Yeah. So imagine that now expanded to like a level where it's not something that's like prepared at a store that you buy, and you're doing it to a human being yourself, and obviously everything that comes with that.
Yeah, we've all seen it probably in the movies, maybe in real life. You take out a deer and you go, here, young man, take a bite of the heart. I just ripped it out. You can give, homage to the spirit of the deer or whatever, right? And you're like, okay, that sounds interesting. But, take that to the human level and going, dude, taking out these organs, getting that whatever powers one can perceive to get out of it, or I'm just curious what you guys think about that kind of concept in a way. Is that even a concept that they think, or is that just something where we've been taught in movies or whatever? Some people are just sadistic, probably for the sake of being sadistic, I bet,
Of course.
Yeah. They're not thinking then esoteric,
Yeah.
In some cases, but these cults do, and they do love. I mean, the creatures are running amok nowadays out in the open, and they are super sinister. Like all the people that we have seen, politicians and CEOs, they're all in a club, and that club does involve harming people, and they laugh about it, and they do find joy. I feel like, for me, I'll take it a step further and go, they've received the black goo, some sort of other entity into their being, with the voluntarily, with the promise that they would gain riches, fame, whatever. We see them go away for a while and come back with a black eye, and look, and even their eyes, the whites of their eyes gone for a while, and their bone structure being different, and them just being wackos. So is that other entities in here involved in these these murders or whatever? I think they're all in, and I know, I don't know if it's out of the scope of the conversation of the show, but I just think
I have trouble separating the two. I think they're definitely connected. What about you, Regan?
I think it's all connected. So we could talk about any topic, and I'm just going to connect it to all the rest anyways. So it really,
I mean, the entity,
it's all interchangeable to me, where like we live in a world filled with spirits and entities, and I think a ton of beings that most people are pretty blissful unaware of. I wouldn't
Yeah.
know to what extent exactly either. It's a huge place, so I don't think any one person really does know unless they have access to whatever ancient mystical connections or still have their full brain capacity or all their genetics working properly or whatever it is. But even then, I think we're in such a massively large thing where it's not for one person to ever understand or know it all or whatever, but it's all connected. I mean, however you want to look at it, I started in the engineering side and I'm very physical and I wanted to learn all those things, but I grew up with a big spiritual background and lots of different influences. And to me, I could never separate any of it. There never was any separation between like church and state or whatever other bullshit that they put out there. Everything was interconnected. Everybody works with everybody. And by that, it's not just man and man, it's man and animal and beast and whatever else is out there. And I don't think we understand our own genetics or our own makeup or whatever it is that puts us together entirely. So, to say that there's not vampires out there, Bigfoot, or alien like
Mhm.
beings to your person, well, I mean, how do you know? You just don't. So, I mean, yeah, like all this serial killer stuff, I'm fascinated by it just because it's a very extreme portion of what it means to like control the world or to be a world dominant force or something like that. And I don't think this is the first time. I think it happens over and over and over again. You go in big eons of,
All these cycles, right?
yeah, like we're just going through another cycle. But, you know, I don't worry about a lot of this stuff at all. I don't
Oh
really
yeah,
worry
no.
about death. I don't worry, none of the fear mongering. I wouldn't say it doesn't have like an effect, but I really fight against it, right? Like it's just all this stuff's thrown in your face. You choose how you want to accept it. You know,
Well, I feel like the more
it just
people
is.
understand it for what it actually may be, which is something different than the presentation, like it loses its power, even if regardless of the evil stuff going on. Because I never think about this stuff other than when I'm just interested in what's going on, like for my own sake, to understand things. And I don't go out worrying about stuff like this. But the people who do, I think they really buy into that mainstream narrative.
Well, and they give them that energy, right? You
Yeah,
lose that
and there
loosh or
and
whatever
there's
you
that
want to
loosh.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and so
whatever
there's
word you want to
multiple,
use.
and there's multiple layers of them taking that energy from people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did go down, the rabbit hole of like the Gates, the pizza stuff.
Yeah.
I went down that rabbit
Mm-hmm.
hole and it was like, man, it was dark, and I was like, yo, these people are sick, and there's some sickos out there for real. And it did hurt my heart and spirit. I couldn't even look at certain images in my research. I have to protect my own loosh, and
I
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if some of that starts coming out on like alternative YouTube channels and whatnot soon, or being explored at least by more mainstream alternative YouTubers. So
so
we'll see how
The
they.
Janet Osborne story.
so a lot of things that I
Sorry.
equate like with these cycles, because I see things. One looks in the past, right, and I'm like, those things that one is looking at in the past is happening also now today. And what I mean by that in this sense is like, you know, the pizza stuff, right? For just as an example, and how did they kind of hijack that story and make it kind of go away, right? Or
What's the Janet Osborne one you were just mentioning, Regan?
She did all the. She did like a 10-part series, I think, back when Trump's first election.
The October rain
And
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
she kind of went into everything though, and a majority it was human trafficking and the world leaders and fake nations and enforcing military police states. But she just did one 10-part series on that stuff. She did a whole nother one or two, and halfway through her third one in 2022, she died mysteriously, and there's like a whole big thing around that now too.
Jesus.
I didn't dive into it too much, but basically she was, I want to say, Dutch, or she was from over in the Sweden and Finland area. And yeah, there's just lots of mystery around her in general, and where was she pulling all the information. I mean, she always started off the whole thing with, oh, all I did was, when the pandemic started or when Trump got elected, I started researching stuff and I found, here's what I found. But she had it in like this perfectly ordered list of events, starting back from whatever year and then 1900s all the way to now. And again, this kind of gets into one of those things where I was like, how can one person have possibly compiled all this information, did all the video editing, the music score, her voiceover, all this other stuff, and been putting it out? They were like 3 to 6 hour parts. So you got 10 parts that are like 3 to 6 hour in-depth dives of either the Trump administration or the Bidens or Hillary or whoever. I'm just naming the
Yeah, it's
latest political
put out there
presidents, but
probably.
Peter Thiel was in it, the kings, the queens, everybody, right? And that's the thing, is like she has the entire global conspiracy all down into these short segmented documentary series, which one she started right during lockdown in 2020, and 10 parts were chopped out on BitChute within less than 4 months.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Then the
I didn't know she died, but yeah, it's interesting to think about why all that was, how all that came out to be. Yeah.
But that's just one of many where, like Ronan was saying, with the stuff he was looking at that hurt his heart. Like I'm sure I dove into all that too. There's just a lot. Janet Osborne was just one of 50 other, documentary creators who were bored, supposedly, just putting all this stuff together. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you need it. I think even those people who produce a lot of that stuff have delved way too deep into it and aren't realizing that they're actually just generating the effect that they're trying to prevent. You know what I mean? Like, by raising awareness of it, you're actually creating more of a problem.
Yeah.
Same thing with like
Well,
drugs or anything else, right? Make
yeah,
people aware.
I mean, we could bring. There's a lot of different things we can bring up about it, but one is just as an example is what was it, Anthony Weiner's laptop, right? And then like the
Yeah.
chief of police, the New York and stuff was like, "Yo, the stuff on his laptop is so dark, son." And let's just say he didn't live long after that, and a whole bunch of police didn't live long after that, and that laptop never surfaced. So it is wild to think the things that don't come to light, but a lot of this stuff is already known. I don't know the person you're talking about, Regan. I haven't looked in, I don't know her, but a lot of this information has already been shared for for decades.
That's what the other thing was there's a lot of people who already did these series back in the 2000s. They
Yeah.
went unheard of, right?
Yeah,
Nobody
no one
believed
cared.
any of it.
No one believed it.
No one cared.
Well, people cared. It just got.
Yeah.
It just got shut down. Yeah.
I cared. You know what I mean? But they just got.
That's what I mean. I was watching all this stuff, and like I was watching different channels, back in the 2000s, and that's what these communities just weren't here. There wasn't that much. There wasn't, even if they weren't shut down, there was only a couple hundred people involved in like one of the Reddit forums or something like that,
Well, one thing is shining light on the darkness, I believe, is important. Not ignoring it, not putting it under the rug, if you will. Is that a saying? What's that?
Sweeping it under the rug. Yeah.
Rug, yeah. But shining light on the darkness is incredibly important, especially with these creatures running around. And you'll watch them scatter and skirt, but no quarter, in my opinion, on these low vibe crazies. Like, I don't fear them. You know what I mean? So I'm all about pointing a lot of these and naming names and pointing these things out, because staying vigilant is a thing, and raising the vibration is a thing. Not just for one individual. Sure, we can go in the woods as an individual, but we are connected and all that type of talk. Shining light on the darkness, no matter who they are or how powerful it seems that they are. Because anyone that does these types of things, I don't see them as strong. I see them as a bunch of weaklings gathered together in a group of other weaklings.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think the only thing is to be careful with is like, because some of these are ops and sometimes nothing actually happened. And then you wind up like, I was just watching a film based on one of the largest, it was like the most expensive, I think, California trial on a group of elementary schools, and apparently nothing had happened to the kids, but the person who interviewed the kids like really forced them to like play with these dolls and say stuff happened to them after they kept saying nothing ever happened to us, nothing ever happened to us. Now, who knows? If I don't really know the story that well, it could be that film is actually propaganda. But if that did happen, that's, I think, the kind of stuff where you're kind of like, you have to be careful going too far, because then that woman would have done more damage to the kids than the actual people who didn't do anything to them at all. You know what I mean? Like just putting them through that.
Discernment
100%.
needs to be worked on. It's not something you just flip on. It's like working in the gym. You have to build the discernment muscle.
100%.
Yeah, I got stories. I mean, there was a real story where I was told this girl was missing and taken, and she was a friend of one of my stepsons at the time. And I was like, for real? You know what I mean? I was like, I was about to go vigilante. I'm like, where was she last seen? I'm locking and loaded. I'm on the case. I was going to go after. It was a spiritual thing in my energy. I'm not trying to look for glory. I don't care about that. I'm not trying to be a hero. I was like, whoa, is that a real thing? I found out later it wasn't really. It wasn't a thing like that. You know what I'm saying? I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, y'all got me riled up. Like, I don't even know this girl. I just know a young girl is missing. I'm gonna take out whoever took her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how they get you in trouble, man. But
Yes,
that's good though.
Oh man, you know what I mean? But it's very innate to want to protect the flock. But yes, getting misdirected and getting riled up, like you're saying, and that thing that you mentioned, Chris, and it turns out it wasn't really a thing. It's like it's astral turfing also. Like if you ever try and for those that don't know how to research, there's a lot of people that don't know how to research. They'll just go into the goo, type something, or type something nowadays in chat GPT and go 3 seconds later, go, here it is. And I'm like, that's not it. You know, you don't know that there's you got to go a little deeper than that. Wikipedia and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. For me, it's wild. I'm going Ronin. I'm going recluse. I'm going hermit. If I don't know you, I'm not going out of my way anymore. Like I'm no longer like.
Yeah, well, the AI is going to start causing a problem with everyone, how much they're trusting it and stuff. So yeah, people need to start learning some discernment, or we're going to have even more issues than we already do.
I was thinking about this before coming on here. I was in the backyard chilling. I cut the grass. The grass is looking nice. I'm having a little glass of vino because I'm a gentleman. And I was just enjoying. I was like, this is cool. I planted some flowers. I got some flowers going. I was like, the dogs are running around. I'm like, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? This is fine.
Exactly.
I don't need to look for evil. I just like to know when something's coming, and I go, no, thank you. Right? Inject this. No thanks. Watch this. I try not to watch certain TV shows. Try and protect what goes into my brain. That's why, Chris, I'll be honest. The title of the show, I was like, man, I don't even know what I'm going to add because I try and stay away from this darkness nowadays.
Well, that's why. I mean, that's why I was like a very loose. I didn't want everyone to come with a bunch of stuff because I figured I don't need people to be exposing themselves if they don't want to. And I'm sure we all can speak on this at this point without much of a, we don't need books behind us backing us up. We kind of understand the workings of it. And then if I want to go deeper after this in another series of shows or something, I will. I don't know if I'm even wanting to do that at this point. It's just something I wanted to discuss with y'all, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah. Peace to Stacy. By the way, I do have a TV, but it's just a glorified computer monitor. I pirate, I BitTorrent everything that I watch. And I do have
free streaming.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, so I have my guilty pleasures, but no, I don't sit and watch TV. But I have
same. Well, what do you think, guys? You think it's time to wrap it up? Thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's been good. That was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's, like I said, you could pick any topic, and we can discuss it all.
I'm gonna start doing these type of talks more on my channel where they're just open for whoever wants to come on. You don't have to do video. We could just talk about it, and then if I start going in more in depth on something, and anyone wants to join me, they can. Up to them.
Yeah.
But let's definitely plan something for probably a week or so from now, and we'll do another one on here. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. Next week, and actually my brother's bachelor party thing, so it's gonna be after that. But we'll figure it out. I'll hit y'all up.
Yes.
All right.
Want to shout out your pages and so, or Ronan? You want your link's gonna be? I'll put your link underneath, but you could shout it out too.
Yeah, man. So much love and gratitude to everyone out there. Regan, I appreciate you, man. I think this is our first time sharing this digital space together. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, man. Thank you, Chris, for inviting me. I hope I added value.
Absolutely.
Shout out to everyone out there. If you don't know me, check out my YouTube channel, The Ronin Experience. It is very different than most YouTube channels. I've been removing mostly all my old vids. So it's lightning in a bottle, and you got to catch it. And it is perhaps the greatest thing that's ever been streamed across the airwaves and the broadcast. So we cast lots of interesting topics, authenticity, so much love, gratitude. I appreciate each and every one of you. No fear, and you're all incredibly powerful. If you want to come check out my YouTube, feel free. I've got nothing for sale or anything like that. and it's all love. And yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate you. Gratitude.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Everyone's YouTubes will be underneath in the description, including Regan, who doesn't even have really a channel he uses, but I still put it there because I love him. But Silas's and Ronan's, and I'll even put Zeal's if Zeal has something. Yeah, so all the links will be there. Thank you guys for coming and listening, and thank you all for joining me. It was a good chat. Well, I'll talk soon, guys.
Later.
Later, guys.
Good night.
Night.